Katie O'Brien, and I am going to be talking about microplastics. Microplastics is an invisible pollution problem that is unable to see from the naked eye, but it is found in every corner of the globes. This is not just an environmental issue, but it is also a problem for global politics. What are microplastics? Microplastics are fragments under 5 millimeters, which is smaller than a grain of rice. They come in two main types: primary microplastics, which are microbeads, which were once common in cosmetics, or fibers from synthetic clothing. So primary microplastics, they come directly from it. And then secondary microplastics, which result from the breakdown of larger plastic items like water bottles, bags, and packaging. So this is literally everywhere. It's in the deepest ocean trenches, in the Arctic ice, in the soil we grow our food in, and in the air we breathe. It's even within the human body. The sheer amount of this pollutant is staggering, and it is one of the first clues that this problem is a global problem and that there are no borders for this issue. Like I said, this is a borderless problem. The political challenge of microplastics boils down to one word: transboundary. Pollutions released in one country, like textile fibers from a washing machine or a tire particle from a road, they don't respect national borders. It'll be carried by the ocean currents, river systems, and even the atmosphere. This creates a fundamental issue in the international relationships. The tragedy of commons, which is where you prioritize your own self or your nation over the globe or the common good. No single state owns the ocean or the atmosphere, so there is little to no incentive for any one country to unilaterally bear the full cost of cleanup or to have the more strict regulations, especially if their actions only account for a small fraction of the problem. For example, in the countries in the global south, they often have less developed waste management infrastructures, and they typically become dumping grounds for waste from wealthier nations, or are disproportionately affected as plastic waste accumulates on their shores via the ocean currents. This transforms an environmental problem into an issue of global environmental justice and waste inequality. Polluters aren't always the most impacted, which complicates the accountability. Our current international legal framework wasn't designed for a pollution like this. We have a fragmented system. You have regional agreements on marine protection, like the Basel Convention, which addresses transboundary movement of hazardous waste and more, but microplastics tend to fall through the crack. One of the reasons is there is no single regulator. The problem involves trade, environmental protections, public health, and industry standards, meaning it crosses the mandates of numerous international bodies like the WTO or the World Trade Organization, the World Health Organization or the WHO, and the United Nations Environmental Program or UNEP. There's also a disagreement of how they should focus on this. Should they focus on downstream situations like better waste collection and ocean cleanup, or upstream solutions like reducing plastic productions, banning specific chemicals, and enforcing extended producer responsibility laws that hold manufacturers accountable for the entire life cycle of their product? Upstream changes hits the industry and the wealthy manufacturing nations the hardest, and this leads to major geopolitical friction. There's also a lack of standardization. Nations can't even agree on a standardized way to measure microplastics, which makes comparing data and setting global targets and enforcing virtually impossible. But the good news is the international community is finally trying to bridge these gaps. In 2022, the UN Environment Assembly initiated negotiations for the Global Plastic Treaty. This is a monumental effort, as if successful, this treaty will be legally binding and will address plastic pollution across its entire life cycle, from production and design to disposal. It aims to harmonize global standards and promote a circular economy for plastic. However, the negotiations are fraught with political tension as we have some problems like ambition versus economic interests. Nations heavily reliant on plastic productions like major fossil fuels and petrochemical exporters often push for a treaty focused on waste management, which is downstream management. Meanwhile, groups of more environmentally minded nations and island states, which are most affected by the marine pollution, are advocating for caps on plastic productions itself, following the more upstream way of dealing with it. The trade-offs: the final treaty will require tough political compromise on everything from chemical transparency to financial mechanisms to help developing nations pay for improved waste infrastructure. Microplastics then are more than just a tiny pollutant. They are a test case for global governance in the 21st century. They highlight how economic models of the industrial age have created persistent, ubiquitous global problems that our 20th century political institutions are ill-equipped to handle. The success of the Global Plastics Treaty will hinge on whether sovereign nations can overcome their individual economics and political interests to manage a collective environmental threat that is already on our plates, in our water, and inside our bodies.